a book, and I put a couple out there that some of you see. It's called Images of the Past. It's a little black book, and there's kind of one on each table. And it's just such an amazing little book that I thought that it would be nice to maybe talk about it today. And as we talk about it, just remember some of the wonderful things, honoring Robert Melvold for one. He was the editor of the paper, editor emeritus maybe, at the time that this was written, and Lowell Carlson. And so many of us love Lowell Carlson. And just to remember them and thank them for some of the great work that they did. Fascinating little book full of historic photos of Jackson County. And it's just pretty neat. The book is maybe kind of hard to come by. I hope some of you might have one in your home, in your library. I know that when we came here in about 2000, Mitch was, I think, given one by somebody at the newspaper, so we've had one. But it's, of course, not available anymore. So sometimes we have extra copies that are given to us at the museum, and maybe we'll put one on a silent auction now and then. But if you ever see one in a Goodwill shop or somewhere, you should pick it up because it's a neat thing. So just like to read to you a little bit about what I call the foreword of the book, and if you've got the book in front of you, this is what they said. The Maquoketa Sentinel Press and the Bellevue Herald Leader are proud to present this book as a look at our past. This effort, however, belongs to the people of Jackson County, Iowa, those living here now and those who came before. Jackson County is rich in its heritage and history, and this book represents an effort by many people to help preserve that heritage. Images of the Past, and that's the name, is not, nor is it intended to be, a definitive pictorial history of Jackson County. Rather, it's a snapshot of Jackson County's history as seen through the eyes of our forebears. Many of the major events in Jackson County are not recorded here. Instead, most of the photos depict a representative sample of everyday life among the residents of Jackson County through the years. Taken together, the photos tell the story of Jackson County for over more than a century. And continuing on, they said, we issued a call for photos. The response far exceeded our expectations. Many residents opened family photo albums and combed through keepsakes to lend us their photos for this project. The Maquoketa Sentinel Press and the Bellevue Herald Leader are proud to have played a vital role in the history of Jackson County, recording, as does this book, the important events in the lives of our citizens. And then they said, we are indebted to Robert Melvold, publisher emeritus of the Sentinel Press and the Herald Leader, and Lowell Carlson, Herald Leader editor, who wrote the captions for the photos and in many cases did a little extra research. The Sentinel Press and the Herald Leader staffs shared in this project, taking in photos and book orders, designing ads, and otherwise assisting. We also want to thank Bruce Swanson of Heritage House Printing for his advice and direction. Finally, this book simply would not have been possible without the many people who entrusted their photos to us for this project. We hope this book provides a picture of those who made possible the rich quality of life that we still enjoy in Jackson County today. So kudos to them. They did a really neat thing. And so, like I say, the book was around for a while, and it's not been published in a very long time. So if you ever see a copy, latch onto it. So I just picked out, I tried to look at the book and figure out how I thought it was laid out, picture-wise, so that I know how to best do this. And I finally saw that they kind of divided it into groups of years, so I started down that path. But then I figured out that they really didn't keep the photos in the years they said they were in. So we just have a random collection of photos, right? They don't necessarily go in any order or anything like that. Just photos that I at least found, were really interesting. So I chose to begin with, of course, the photos of the Goodnoes. And everybody has seen this picture of Jay Goodnoe and Eliza. And hopefully you can read I hope you can read some of the captions that Lowell wrote, and this is his thing. You know, he's the founder of Maquoketa, and to simplify what they said, when he was a store clerk in New York, he heard about all the opportunities of the West, you know, go West, young man kind of thing. And in January of 1838, he and Lyman Bates set out for the territory, Wisconsin Territory, which is what we were then. They were pulling a 4-horse team, a wagon, with everything that they thought a pioneer settler might need. It was March when they crossed the Mississippi on the ice. And where they crossed is where Sebula is today. And they continued west until they came to the Maquoketa River. And then they settled on higher ground just south of the Forks. And within the first year, Jay Goodnow and his friend established a water-powered mill and living quarters. And then he went back to New York. And he married Eliza Wright, who became Eliza Goodnow. And he brought her back to what would become Maquoketa. Now, according to Lowell, it was another 9-week trip that included episodes of getting lost on the endless prairie. So can you imagine what this lady from New York must have thought as she ventured out here? What a brave, wonderful person I'm sure she must have been. And then last week we had a wonderful brown bag lunch that kind of headed up our 250th by Barb Pesca. And she talked about the Deerfield Massacre, as you remember. And so I wanted to be sure and include this photo. It was donated by Dave and Sidney Brady, who are Nim's relatives. And this was the descendant of the people that survived the massacre. His name was Amasa Nims. I always had pronounced it Amasa, but she said Amasa, and I'm sure she knows. And so on the second wagon train, well really the first wagon train that came out after J.E. came back out, he was on that wagon train and he came to Maquoketa. Well, it just happened that J. Goodnow's sister that you see there was on that train as well, and you heard from Barbara how she was coming out to keep house for J.E. Goodnow. And as Barb said, they fell in love along the way, and they were the first white couple married in Jackson County. Their son, John Wesley, the eldest of 7 children that they had, was the first white child born here, and that was on January 20th of 1840. Amasa planned to clear the land and build a house. He was going to clear like 180 acres and build the house. But he was an adventuresome kind of guy, as she said, and in 1859 he left for the Colorado goldfields. And he went to pan for gold, so I'm sure he left her with her brother, and off he went. So Amasa and Adeline were 2 of the first 5 founders of Maquoketa's Methodist Church. So you can see that they as a couple played heavily in the founding of Maquoketa and what went on in Jackson County. Just flipping through the book, one of the next pictures that stuck out to me was what we call here when we talk about the Big Woods. So this is a photo of the Big Woods, 1890 era. And this is what they would have found as they came here. 70% of our county supposedly then was timber. There were oak, walnut, maple, ash, butternut, just hickory nut, just about every kind of hardwood tree that you could imagine. And you couldn't see the forest for the trees. And as I said, some of these trees, these maple trees, the stand of maple trees, 70 foot high. So we're still one of the most forested counties in Jackson County. It's just interesting what happened to all of our trees, right? Because we don't have nearly as many now. Another photo kind of in this section of the book. Log cabins, of course, were very common here in the 1860s. We had a whole whole year, our theme for the year was the log cabins of Jackson County, if you remember it. Don Wentworth wrote a really nice, big, thick book about the cabins, and there were many cabins still standing around here in 1960. Some of them were still inhabited, and some of them, as we've talked about before, had become the middle of the core of a whole house that was built up around them, and over the years, people forgot that there was actually a log cabin in the middle. That happened with the Cornelius cabins, right, Nancy, I believe? And the ones that are, the one that's in our machine shed on the fairgrounds. So they were just wonderful cabins, and they had been, first they might add a more modern kitchen, and they would add bedrooms, and they built around them until people didn't know they were there anymore. So log cabins were really, really common. And we've used this picture before because it's just such a neat example. That's Hans Scott that's leaning up against a tree. He did so much for Jackson County, the Buckhorn Creamery, a lot of the things. And he was a very inventive man. He built the first limestone silo. He brought in breeds of cattle that weren't here before. His farm that he settled was very swampy, but because of his upbringing, he knew how to tile and drain land, and he ended up with this wonderful, wonderful farm. And so that's just the story of that particular log cabin. But can you imagine all the people that lived in that log cabin? And then his wife, Helene Elisat, she came over from East Prussia to live in this cabin, and with all these other people, and to help out her aunt and uncle. So, and this was donated by Velma Scott. So this is Pat Gent's family and her relatives. Another, oh, and they're not here today. Another photo that I picked out, because usually Steve Tubbs is here, Steve and Chris Tubbs are here, but they're not here today. This is, you can see, is George and Angeline Harris Tubbs, and they were Ed Tubbs's great-great-grandparents. And it talks about how, in the book, in the caption, Lowell wrote about how that farm now was in the hands of Steve Tubbs. And he's the 6th generation, but people just kept coming. So I just wondered if anybody, I was going to ask them if they had any memories of all this, but they're not here. They're not here to ask. Okay, so as we go along, if you know anything about any of these photos or you have things to add, please do. So let's make this just kind of a little discussion as we go forward. So this is a picture of Bellevue. And of course, Bellevue is so wonderful. It was really the beginning in Jackson County, right? It was here way before Maquoketa. And this is just an early image that the Bellevue Herald had of the city. It was taken from the South Bluff of where the park is up there. And this photo tells us a lot. I just wondered, what do you see in this photo that's different to you, that you don't usually see today?
No dam.
Absolutely, no dam, that's for sure. What else do you see? How about, I don't know if how about this?
Yeah.
This is water.
Ah.
Oh,
Is that there now? So that was, I'm sorry? That was the mill pond. Yeah, off to the left, that was a big mill pond. And when you, and I don't think I put it in here, but when you look at a photograph like this of Maquoketa, you also see that there was a huge mill pond out near where Walmart is. That's not there anymore. So, mill pond. And the thing that interests us here, I think, is that you can see where the narrow gauge railroad was. That's certainly not there anymore. And it talks about the narrow gauge terminus. I think that means depot, but I don't know for sure. So, but I just find this a fascinating picture of early Bellevue. And you can see the different places where the smoke is rising. At first I thought, these are just imperfections in the picture, but actually smoke rising from all the different little factories that were working along there.
Is that the Catholic church in the background?
I don't know, we have to ask some Bellevue people. Right here, is this where you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, do you know what
I
church
would
this
guess.
is?
That looks like St. Joe's, doesn't
I
it?
think so
St.
too.
I-
St.
it
Joe's
looks like
Catholic
it.
Church?
Yeah.
the Catholic Church.
I bet it is.
Okay,
That's all it
all right, and what else do you see that you can point out to people? So am I correct in assuming because this picture was taken from the bluff, you don't really see Potter's Mill, right? It's back, kind of tucked back under maybe? It would be that kind of along the edge of the bluff maybe, so we don't see that.
What happened to the pond or the lake there?
Okay, what did happen to the pond or the lake? Maybe, I don't,
Is that the lagoon? Or the the sewer waste thing that's there? No.
No,
No.
no.
know.
No.
So where did this huge mill pond go, is the question?
Well, part of it obviously was where Potter's Mill is because that's kind of down.
Okay,
In the hole.
down in here.
Yes.
Well, Potter's Mill, wouldn't it be kind of to the left off the picture? Oh, yeah. One might just use it as a mill.
Really?
They must have drained that and just, because
Filled
all
it
that's
in.
next to Potter's Mill now is just a little stream.
A little stream, right,
Oh, yeah, the lumber yard's there too.
Yes.
right.
Coming over the bridge.
So,
Yes. Yes.
but isn't this a great picture? Anything else anybody sees here that we can,
Yeah, the lock and dam. It'd be interesting, I've been reading again about Mark Twain, Life on the Mississippi, and he talks about the
Awesome.
drop from the headwaters all the way down. And I forgot exactly how much drop it is between Prairie du Chien and Bellevue and on further south. Does anybody know when the lock and dam was established?
1934.
34.
33.
Google.
Does anybody remember what the drop was back then?
That I don't know.
'Cause it was.
My father and Mama's father helped clear the lumber, the trees, in advance of the dam being put
Yeah,
in.
what year was that?
In between 1932 and 34, early 30s.
Yeah, because in Twain's book, he describes in this area, all the clear cutting they had 150 years ago, just how congested it was, that you had to blast the logs out of the river, going further north by Prairie du Chien and further north towards La Crosse and Pikes Peak and stuff. They describe all the clear cutting back in the 20s, which of course silted in all the river.
the river?
That's interesting that your family did that.
Well, thank you for that, thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting book, and it's got a lot of stuff in there about what you're describing right now about settling and things like that. It's,
Good to know.
I read it when I was a kid, but, so this year, we got to pick up another motorcycle project. We're gonna hit the river again and head south, and we'll try to get some pictures of it. Going down through Hannibal, on through the south. But it's quite a read if you ever get a chance to read Twain's book.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Sorry, I fidget. I need a clicker instead of a mouse. Okay, so back to Maquoketa. Everybody, I'm sure, has seen, if not this picture, pictures of the town clock building, right? It was on Platt Street, East Platt Street, just around the corner where the, I don't even know what's there now. What's on that corner? It's empty right now, okay? On the corner, no, a block up on Main Street. It's between the Farm Bureau and where Marcella's Dolls and Doodads store was.
Supplemental insurance is in there now. Rhonda Pape, they have that supplemental insurance, that's along in there now.
Okay,
And the tattoo guy was,
yeah, he is there, you're right. So he's probably in this building, right? So this building, of course, still stands. And on the little plaque right here, it says Dr. Dobson, 1890. You can read that plainly. A lot of us remember all the stories of Dr. Dobson, Dr. A.B. Dobson. He was an early resident of Maquoketa. He was called our spiritual healer. He never saw a patient, but he had patients from all over the world. They would send him, remember they would send a letter with a lock of hair, $1, and their ailment. Then he would have a seance. And he had help, he had recorders and helpers, and he would have a seance, and he would diagnose their problem, and he would send them back 1 bottle of his special elixir. I'm not sure what he called it. His spiritual elixir. Yes, that's what we would call it today. He was interesting, but he also was a great humanitarian. He did so much for Maquoketa. At one time, we know he owned 18 of the large brick buildings in Maquoketa. Not that he built them all, he built some of them, but he owned them. He was mayor of Maquoketa for, I believe, 2 terms before he moved away. He did things for Maquoketa, like he paid, back in the day before we had lights and electricity, he paid a lamplighter to light the lights every night on Main Street, and then in the morning to go put them out. He paid that out of his own pocket. He put up water fountains in downtown Maquoketa and horse troughs so that farmers, or people, when they brought their carriages and their horses, could water their horse. And so he did so many wonderful things for Maquoketa, and then he finally moved on to California. But that was our Dr. A.B. Dobson, a fascinating man. But he also built this town clock. And somewhere we have the facts and figures of how much that cost. Back in the day, in my mind, it seems like it was about $2,400 way back then. And this clock was, of course, on 4 sides. It could be seen all over Maquoketa, and it was just a wonderful thing for the people of Maquoketa, just kind of, you know, tying everybody together. It finally stopped working, and instead of getting it fixed, the people of Maquoketa decided that they just scrapped the clockworks that were in it and tore down the tower. And I think that's too bad. I wish sometimes we had a little more foresight, but anyway, the clock tower came down, but for many years it was just a famous, and as you see some of the old pictures of Maquoketa from the different directions, you can always see this landmark of Maquoketa that's there. So I keep going backwards, sorry. Please.
I think I read in the way back when stuff
Okay.
that the tower came down and they used the scrap metal in World War II.
Okay, I'm sure they scrapped it out,
Yeah.
and so, you know, but wouldn't it have been nice if they had just repaired it and kept it, and we still had it? That would have just been really nice. Okay, so this again, who knows what corner this is on? Don't see too much of it.
Pleasant Maine.
Pleasant, Maine.
No, Pleasant
Those steps,
Valley.
it did give away.
Okay, and what did those steps do, Marilyn?
When they went upstairs.
I'm not familiar, but
Yes, they
I
did.
could tell those steps.
You're right. And look at right there.
Downstairs.
They went downstairs. And that's when we were, you know, when they did the redoing of downtown and the new sidewalks, and they found all of the buildings or the rooms and businesses and things that were on the lower level that people had forgotten were there. All up and down the street, there were little stairs like this that led people down to the businesses that were downstairs. So if you remember, the main businesses were on the first floor. The doctors, the lawyers, etc., were always on the 2nd floor. On the 3rd floor, most of these buildings, these brick buildings, had 3 floors. On the 3rd floor were the fraternal organizations and groups like that. But in the basement, there were also some very neat businesses, and we do have records of a lot of these. A lot of the, excuse me, beauty shops, barber shops were down below. We look sometimes at the one of the Orpheum Theater, and you can see the plumbing business that was down below. Just a lot of things, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go down there when they were digging out all of this, and there were actually windows in the walls from one building to the next. I mean, you didn't see outside, you just saw into the next building. Beautiful wallpapers, and some of the places that were hairdressers, just a lot of really neat things back there. And Nancy gave a nice brown bag lunch about that, about a year or so ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so
That was an interesting one.
it was just a fascinating part of our world that, again, like the log cabin in the middle of the house, people over time have forgotten that there were all these businesses on the lower level of Maquoketa. So, okay, Gordon's Ferry. You know, we have very little, I think, information here about Gordon's Ferry. Does anybody have thoughts about Gordon's Ferry? Experiences? Gordon's Ferry was an important landing back in the day, as it says. It was the easiest way to get across the Mississippi to Galena and back. When they no longer needed the ferries, it became a depot, a stop on the railroad.
Where, was it in Sebula or where?
So it was in the way northern part, so above Bellevue, north of Bellevue, right? And it was just a little community. I don't know if there's anything there now.
Isn't it, that's even north of Marquette.
Nowadays,
No.
is there two? Were there two?
Well, it was in Jackson County,
Oh.
so maybe there were
It
two.
would be before St. Denis though.
Yes, before you would get to St. Anita's. Is there another one? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
You can see the speed.
One operation.
That's what it probably was.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
okay.
yeah, we went
No,
on.
no, that was Castle.
So what powered the ferry?
I'm sorry.
Were they using mule and horses, or?
They had a couple different kinds of ferries. They had one that was horse-powered or mule-powered that took them across. Later on, it was replaced by a steam ferry, and they would just take goods back and forth across the Mississippi. So we had Gordon's Ferry, Clark's Ferry that was down by Green Island. There were four main ferries in Jackson County, but this was the northernmost ferry. We have just a few pictures in our collection of the ferries at Gordon's Island, Gordon's Ferry, but we really need more information. So if you come across anything, we sure would like to know that.
Did you have any information on how long it took to cross Mississippi?
I don't know.
And once again, if we knew how wide the Mississippi was back then.
It would be helpful, right?
it'd be- Yeah.
Yeah.
Find out.
Yeah, and evidently it was fairly shallow there, and I say that because when they built the bridge across, that was, you know, of course, everybody was vying to have it built in their section of the world, and it was built at Dubuque because it was shallow and there was a bedrock, you know, a heavy bedrock to build it that was close up. So, but we sure need more information about Gordon's Ferry. So this is a picture of Frank Beaton, and this is, I think, his nephew, whose name was also Frank Beaton. And this was certainly common around Jackson County. It was on his farm, and they were boiling down the maple syrup. And it was fun to me to know, I didn't realize this before, but all of the maple syrup that they made, they sold to Jim Marus's, at the Royal Confectionery to make his candy. And I did notice in the book, if you see that picture in the book, I think there's an error there, because he said that it was made for the Green Mill. And the Green Mill wasn't the Green Mill until Pateresis came here and bought it from Marus's. So it was the Royal Confectionery then. And so, Barb, is this like where the Mayberry Farms are?
Just north of Maquoketa.
Okay.
The river, on Old Highway.
On the old highway.
Yeah. That's Nancy Mayberry's parents, yeah. It
Okay,
was on the left, right before you would turn to go up to the caves, on the old, you know, that no longer goes to the caves.
Okay.
Right up there.
all right. And there were the four Mayberries, the four Beaton sisters, right?
Yes,
Janice, Nancy, who was
Louise,
Bill
and
Mayberry's
Evelyn.
wife, and Louise,
And Evelyn.
and Evelyn. So they were certainly well-known folk here. So that is maple syrup. And this is an old bridge. Again, north of Bellevue. There was just some wonderful things north of Bellevue. I just wish we had these wonderful, picturesque stone bridges, or cement bridges, this one's called, that we have now. And they just had so much more character than the bridges that they replaced them with. But that's just such a thing. So that was Shoup Bridge. And it's a little bit like was there not a Codfish Hollow Bridge that looked a little bit like this? That was taken out not very long ago. Do you remember that, Roger? Codfish Hollow Bridge?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But it looked a little like this, didn't it?
Absolutely, I was gonna say that. There's a lot of similarity, and when I drive Codfish, I always look at that bridge and think, the horses went over that bridge on the way to town.
And it's still there, though.
What's that?
Is it still there? No. Is it still there?
Oh, yes. On
Okay.
Codfish, yes.
The Codfish Hollow is still there. Okay.
Yes. It's about, it's about 4 or 5 miles out of the road to the highway to Andrew.
Okay.
But it's very visible.
And just picturesque and wonderful. I think we need to keep things like that. Okay, another picture that stood out, whoops, sorry, that stood out to me was Kirchhoff's ice cream. Well, first it was ice, then he made it ice cream, ice and ice cream. But look at those wonderful old trucks. This is his fleet of delivery trucks. And you know, back then they had the Iceman that came to every house in Bellevue, Macokota, every house, and you put a little card in the window. You know these things when you're old. You put a little card in the window, and the card was divided into diamond shapes, sort of like this. I can remember the cards, and depending on which side you had up, that told the Iceman how many pounds of ice you wanted. And then he would get his ice tongs, and he would go to the back of his wagon, and he would take out a block of ice, and he would carry it to your house, and usually there was an outdoor opening, and he, just off the kitchen, and he would open that and put your block of ice in, and off he'd go.
Do you have any shots of the Ice Harbor Bellevue
You know,
in action?
not in action, I don't think. We have some from Kirchhoff doing ice on the Macokota River. I don't think we have a little more about the Ice Harbor in Bellevue because John Hoff developed a park down there. Did he? There's a park there right now.
Yes,
Is there?
yes.
Okay,
There's just a little sign there to the north of
Yes.
the park that says
Yeah.
Ice Harbor.
okay.
Yeah.
You can walk down that path. and
Yeah,
it's
right,
there.
right.
So that's where all this went on then, the ice harvesting there.
It's a pretty small area.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, there's a sign there, you can walk down.
Down and look at it. Okay.
My dad, as a young boy, worked for, and I can't come up with the name right now, and helped cut ice and deliver it.
Really. Well, in the Penningroth machine shed, trying to remember which machine shed it's in, because Phil moves things around. We have a really nice display of ice harvesting. We have saws that were used to cut through the ice. We have big ice tongs that were used to, pick up the big blocks of ice, and a really nice description of what went on. But again, that was in the Macokota area.
Another thing is,
Yeah.
was the ice clean?
No.
It wasn't, I mean, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just, whatever was in, maybe you could have something in there.
yeah, like a worm or a fish or a
Oh, yeah.
fern leaf, or you just,
Okay.
yeah, dirt, yeah,
It's just used for cooling, right?
right. Yeah, you didn't drink it, it just kept your food cold in your ice box.
Your
Ice
very
box.
good, thank you.
It kept the food cold. And I always think of that, what might have been in those blocks of ice. And then I always wonder too, because when they used the steam engines that they had to fill with water, and they would have a hose and they would take the water right out of the river or right out of the stream or right out of the pond. And all the little lizards and whatnot that must have, I just wonder about that, but it could have been.
Well, it's another issue with operating a boat like that, because when it burns off all the water,
Oh,
then the draft gets shallower on the boat, and it's really hard for the pumps to pull water out of the, the
Oh.
source is from the Mississippi River Museum.
Okay,
But they're pulling these huge pumps powered by steam, which is kind of counterintuitive because it takes water to generate steam to pull water back out. So what would happen is, and they've had a lot of the boats capsized down by St. Louis, because when they burn off the water, it evaporates, it gets it's already top heavy. So with a shallow draft, is wind or a big wake or something, over she goes, and they had a lot of those back
really?
there. Yeah. Everything you never knew that I find out.
That's pretty awesome.
No, it's the Mississippi Museum upstairs has a lot of that
A lot
information.
of information.
On operational issues and,
Good. Yep,
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
Mississippi River Museum. Yeah. You know, they always say about museums, there's 3 kinds of people that go. We now know what kind of person he is, right? The first class of people are the streakers. That's what museums teach you. And they just go whizzing through. And they, you know, kind of glance at this and glance at that, they're gone. Then there's the student. There's the second class. They stop and they look a little bit, okay? And then the third ones are the students that read every sign and see everything there is and learn all there is to know. So there's just those 3 types of people that go to museums. But just imagine all of these beautiful old riverboats, and there were a lot of explosions, weren't there?
well, when it flops over, you have all these hot boilers, and then they hit the water.
Oh.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of explosions.
Okay, all right, and we have to remember that our Captain Wood from Sabula owned 18 of these huge steamboats at one time, and one of them was the St. Paul, which is what this one is right here. I think that's the St. Paul, but he was a riverboat captain, and Jeremiah Wood, and he owned a lot of these good boats. Pretty amazing. I need a clicker. Okay. So this is when they went into another section of the book, which I didn't quite understand how they divided it up. Everybody knows what this beautiful building is, right? It's old and it's part of St. Donatus. And it has these massive stone walls. I hope everybody's been there. It's one of their old historic Luxembourg buildings. It's changed many years, as you can see. I know there was a doll museum there at one time, a very fantastic doll museum. There have been so many things in this building over time, but it keeps being preserved and it keeps standing, and we're so glad that it does. Is it right across the street from Calmus? Right across the street?
Yeah.
Okay, and then this back here, I believe, is the Galen Barn. Would that be right?
Yes.
Okay. Have you been there recently? Tell us, Barb.
It's beautiful. They got it renovated so well. And the brewery is
It has a mini brewery, right?
Yeah.
In the barn.
and there's things for the kids to play, you know, like games like too, while the parents are enjoying the different kinds of beers.
Okay.
And they have like 14 or 15 beers on tap to sample.
Okay.
It's good.
It's good, huh? Okay. And now I was there maybe a year ago. So the genies went, correct? I think I went along. And so it was just awesome to see it. And if I understood right, now the Galen house in the forefront has been made into rooms to rent out to people who are renting the Galen barn for their big functions and things.
Or even if they're not, I mean,
Okay.
it's available, Airbnb.
Just a B&B.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also thought how awesome if you're having a family reunion or
Yeah.
something. You'll rent the whole place and you've got the mini brewery with really good beers and all of the history to see, and then rooms for everybody to stay in, and the Kelmus restaurant across the street.
What's upstairs in that?
Bedrooms, right?
That's the bedroom.
That's where the bedrooms are, I believe, yeah. And they were quaint, just really neat when we saw them. So just really not, anybody stayed there or know more about that? It certainly isn't what it was back in the day, but how wonderful that it's been preserved. and it'll probably be there forever now. So that's just a neat thing. So did anybody, Dawn, did you have something to add about the Galen? Okay, I thought Nancy was pointing.
I think,
I was.
I think everyone should go check that out.
Out,
To actually go into the Galen barn and see all the restoration
right.
that's in there, as well as the Galen house, that they rent rooms out, and they've done a wonderful job
They have.
with preserving.
They have. You can just see how the old barn was made to begin with, and because they've kept everything that they could keep as historic as they could, and still repurpose it for today's use. So it's a wonderful thing.
It's on the historic record.
Yes, it is. Historical register.
Yes.
Okay, I keep going the wrong way, sorry. Okay, so this is kind of one of my favorite things. And it was interesting to me that in this book, it's one of the few things that they kind of followed the story through with pictures. Other than that, they're just kind of random pictures. But what you're looking at is called the Old Stone Store. And for a long time, it was Crum Biddy's clothing store. And it was there for so long, Crum Biddy's rented that. It was there for so long that it became known as Crum Biddy's Corner. But that is where Make-A-Splash is today, Main Street. A historic corner of Main and Platt Street. And that is on the southwest corner. Southwest corner, right? So this building was built in 1863 by Joseph Willey. Any relation?
I have no idea.
Part of the Willard family, yeah.
Okay. So in 1863 by Joseph Willey, it was across from Goodnose Hotel, probably when it was a cabin, and probably still when he tore the cabin down and built his brick hotel. And it held many businesses over the years, and as we said, Crum Biddy's was the oldest building. But the old stone store, and right next to it was Man's Jewelry Store, right there. And then down here, Blessings Grocery Stores. I did not remember it that way, but that's what it said. That's what they had in the book. And then this would be the annex to the old courthouse, I believe, is what they were saying. And I didn't have room to put the whole caption from the book, but I think that's what the book said.
Is there now?
Make-A-Splash.
Did they have to tear it down though? I mean, there's.
Yes.
Oh, it
Yes. So think of that wonderful building. It had huge, huge blocks of limestone, 1863. It was amazing to build it. The people that placed the stone were a Mr. Blessing and a Mr. Zitterl, and that's what they built that. Now, they followed through in this book with the next picture. I can go the right direction, and I didn't. Okay, there in 1920-21, you see the old stone store coming down. You see all the piles of, they neatly piled up the stones as they took it down. You can see where it would have gone. Isn't that a neat picture? So this is 1920-21. They took it down to make room for the new American Savings Bank. Okay? And the massive stones that were carefully put there by these two men were crushed. And they were used for the foundation of a monstrous vault for the bank. And Roger, that vault's still down there, right? I think that vault is still in that corner building. So they hauled away the rest of the debris. People purchased the rest of this to use it for fill for different things that they were building. So they hauled all the rest of the stone away except what they used for the vault and lock boxes is what they had said. And then I did read, and this wasn't part of this book, so forgive me, but I did read that on June 24th of 1921, while this was all coming down, the boom of a large derrick was lifting a big 1-ton block of limestone, and the boom broke. as it was swinging this big limestone block. And it dropped to the ground and it landed right in the middle of 5 workmen that were working there, and not one of them was hurt. I don't know how that could have happened, but it was just a real tragedy when they, I mean, you can imagine tearing this thing down with these monstrous big stones. So, okay, then there's the next picture that they put in the book. This is the American Savings Bank. And it was built in 1921. Now they started the plans. They started to build this building in 1918. But what was going on in 1918? World War I. And there was not money available. There were not supplies available, building supplies, because everything was being used for the war effort, right? So they were not able to move forward with this until later, and they started in 1921. So what you see here is the monstrous vault that we were talking about that went in the basement of this bank, and is still there. The bank then, it's a beautiful, beautiful bank. We have wonderful pictures of it. It opened officially in 1922, but in 1931 it closed. Why did it close? The crash. That's right. So this big, beautiful bank, all marble inside, just gorgeous, was in operation for less than 10 years. I mean, that's just so sad. Okay.
What bank is this?
This is American Savings Bank.
Right now?
Roger. Yeah, right? No.
No,
No.
what is in, what is in there?
The story is in regard
Thank
to the bank and the vault. The idea was that if you had a big vault, you were a strong bank.
Yes.
But it didn't turn out that way.
It didn't.
It was only open for a short period of time.
Less than 10 years.
And it's quite a story.
It is.
How'd they get it in the basement from there?
Well, evidently, they hadn't closed up the wall yet, and they moved it into the basement. How did they build the pyramids? I mean, how did they move massive things back in the day? I don't know. But they got this in the basement, and they enclosed the bank around it, and that's why it's still there today. Okay, so this is 1930, well, this is 1921-ish. 10 years later, 1931. Does anybody know what happened to it in 1931? Who bought this? The American Legion. So it was the American Legion building for a long time. Now, they didn't put exactly, well, maybe they did. Gosh. Okay, so here we are, American Savings Bank, now closed. This was beautiful black, kind of a marble.
Or granite?
There wasn't, well, that was. This was granite.
Okay.
But I think, well, I don't, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so now the American Legion owns it. So the American Legion rented out the first floor, right? And in this picture, it was a National Tea Company food store that was there. And then the American Legion used the rest of the building.
Upstairs, they used it upstairs, because I used to go, I came here in 1966.
Okay, 1966.
And you went up there and they'd have dinners and stuff like that, and flags would be up there.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, then we used to go downstairs.
Absolutely.
We went to the bar.
Absolutely. Does anybody else remember that?
I remember going, yes.
Okay, or nobody wants to admit going downstairs to the bar, which is good.
I went to the bar.
Okay.
Very bar.
Okay. I just remember our dear friend Bill Lucky, who we just lost, talking about his father, Harry Lucky. And Harry was a cook for the American Legion, or a member of the American Legion, hearing about all the wonderful, huge kettles of soups and things that they cooked. So I think maybe the kitchen was in the basement, the food went up to the second floor for the banquets. We know that there was a huge, wonderful, beautiful piano up there, because we were invited to go look at the piano and see if we wanted that piano, you know, when this closed. Okay, so we look at the National Tea Food Store. We look at the men here. Now Lowell Carlson is supposing that these men were Legionnaires and that they were the building committee. And he said, and he's the one that said he was supposing. And this was Ralph McNerney. He was the head of the Green Bay Lumber Company. This is Frank Purington, who owned the Ben Franklin store. This is Harold Keeney. Ooh, I'm short somebody. There's 5 people there. Harold Keeley, who was the attorney, and James Marusis of the Royal Cafe. I must have left one out, because I see 5 men there now. Anyway, does anybody know?
Is that second person a lady instead of a man right there? Like
Okay.
I think that's a wife.
That's a lady.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm redeemed. Thank you. Yeah, I think you're right. So anyway, Lowell was just assuming that this was the building committee. So certainly prominent men in the community. So it's just interesting, after a while, the National Food Store, we're told, moved. They moved so that they would have better parking for their customers. Does anybody know where they moved to?
Wasn't it over on Second Street, across from the library?
Okay.
Yes.
I don't remember that. Well, and is that where it was? Okay. Now we know. I did not.
If you go back to your picture there, in the book, it tells you that Ralph McNerney, the Green Bay Lumber, Frank Purington, Ben Franklin store owner, Harold Keeley, the attorney, and Art McGowan was a realtor and a cattle buyer.
Okay, he's the one I don't have on here. Thank you for that.
James J. Marusis,
Who I thought was this one.
it says in your book here. But no, I worked at National Team, my first job.
Okay. Awesome. Anyway, good history. So this store was rented out off and on to many, many different people. Now we know that Steve Moorhead, I think, still owns the building, if I'm right. And now we have Mega Splash is here. But who remembers what was there before? So we said that
Hamilton's.
Okay, and before Hamilton's, we said that there was Man's Jewelry Store next door. Man's Clothing Store was there. That was probably in the 50s.
M-A-N-N.
Okay.
Was it M-A-N-N?
Yes, and they were brothers, right? And so, and then from Man's Clothing Store probably to Hamilton's Clothing Store, right? Okay. And so, and then today, it's Mega Splash. All right.
Bonnie,
Yes.
is there an entrance downstairs from the street? I mean,
Not anymore, is there, Roger? Do you know an entrance from the street now?
Wasn't there a fallout shelter down there?
There may have been. I know that when we did our tours of the downstairs that Nancy talked about in her brown bag lunch, there was an opening here. And I know that when they emptied that out, there was a freight elevator there, and piled in a heap in the street, about this high, we looked at that, and there were the most awesome collection of gears and chains and, you know, all rusty and old, but that they had taken out of down there. It was probably, I'm assuming, it was some kind of a early elevator or something. So it was just fascinating. And so I asked the city if the Historical Society could have a big hunk of that. And they said, of course. And then they took it to the dump and we didn't get it. Just saying. They did let us take pictures, but we did not get it. And I thought that would just make an awesome display. Okay, so we're running out of time. If I go the right direction. Okay, so American Legion. There is the Timber City Post number 75. All right. There is Harold Hinckley. Wonderful, wonderful druggist in Maquoketa that owned Hinckley Pharmacy. He was the drum major. He was famous all over the country for his drum majoring because he did such neat things. And they won award after award as they competed all over the country. And we have one of these two drums in our other building, and I can't tell you which one, but we're happy to have that. We also have Harold Hinckley's trumpet that he had. And so this is just a great story of this band that represented Maquoketa and did so well. Oh, geez. All right. One of my favorite pictures of downtown Maquoketa. Can you imagine the streets being so busy?
No.
Isn't that wonderful? And they carefully measured so that, I don't think I wrote this down. I didn't. They carefully measured so that they could park. Now these were mostly Model Ts, I'm told, because they were shorter than normal. And so they carefully measured, and if they parked diagonally, they could have Model Ts parked on both sides of the street and still have 2 lanes of street down the middle of our main street, which has not gotten any bigger or smaller. It's the same size.
What's the white underneath it?
You know, I don't know. I don't know if it's some kind of a shadow, because I don't know what this is either.
You can see the shadows of the cars.
But it's, and so I went back to original pictures that the museum has that would not have been the same one used for the book, and that's there as well. So I don't know what that is. It's really weird for a shadow.
Or someone said the back of the, or the left side of it has the reflection of the other vehicles. So it might be.
But the people look like they're dressed for winter.
Yeah, they do. The people look like they're dressed for winter.
I see a wheelchair. Way over here is a wheelchair, maybe? What is that? But in the middle of all of these, what do you see? One horse and wagon.
I think it's a wagon.
One horse and wagon in the middle of all of those Model Ts. So I like to think that this was probably in the 30s, and it doesn't tell us when it is. In the 30s, when my grandparents came here from West Fayette County, they drove through town, they saw a sign on a store that said vacant, bakery closed. My grandfather said, if any town this busy needs a bakery, he got out of his car and he bought the store right then. And so Harry and Mabel Wells had the Morning Glory Bakery in Maquoketa for a very long time, and then Bill Wells had a bakery in Bellevue for a while. So anyway, it was this busyness that made that happen. So I just think that's neat. Okay, so the 7 Cornelius brothers, and yep, 7 Cornelius brothers. So you could probably see, so Charles, Fred, Louis, William, John is driving, Henry is here, and Albert is there. Any comments, Nancy?
Very good.
Anyway, is that not just an awesome picture? And so it said that Fred served 8 2-year terms as Jackson County Supervisor. Alice Cornelius donated the photo, but isn't that a wonderful old photo? And when I looked at that, I thought to myself, wow, there's so many wonderful ways to look at this book. You could have just gone through the book and picked all of the wonderful old automobiles and had a whole program. Or you could have picked some of the livestock, which I think I missed most of. But, gosh, it's not me, it's the mouse. It has to be. Okay, so this building is no longer there. You'll recognize it as maybe the Emerson Hotel. Back in the day when I was going to school, which is really back in the day, I walked by this building 4 times a day, going up to the middle school that was the high school then. And this building was the Emerson Hotel. It was built right up to the sidewalk. And in the summertime, no air conditioning, I'm sure, all the windows were open, everybody was sweltering inside. And it was the most horrible thing to walk by because it just didn't smell good. It was terrible. But back in, and I apologize, I did not look, but I think in 1903 and possibly 1912-13, this was the YMCA. And a lot of our Golden Glove boxers that we were so famous for, they used this YMCA. This YMCA was also, it was many things during the time. It started out being built by the Ray family as the Emerson Hotel first, and then what we know as the Hearst Hotel was being built by a group of businessmen. They went bankrupt, and so they deserted this building, they bought the Hearst Hotel, and they finished that as the Delmonico Hotel. So the Rays owned the Delmonico Hotel. This, I think, at that time probably became the YMCA, and then it went on to be many, many more things.
Is it still there?
No, it's a parking lot for the UCC Church.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, right across from the UCC Church.
It's for sale.
It's for sale.
It is. And then look at this little building right here. This was, oh, now the name escapes me. This was a blacksmith shop for years and years and years. And when it was no longer a blacksmith shop, I know that my great-grandma and grandpa Gibson lived there. And that little house is still standing, right? Still standing today.
What's UCC, you said?
United Church of Christ. Used to be the Congregational
It's
Church.
on the corner of Platt and
Yeah,
So that was the demo.
The parking lot. The parking
it's
lot.
parking lot
It's
now.
for sale, if anybody wants it.
Nancy?
Delmonico Hotel,
Nancy?
the Delmonico Hotel, and they moved to where the Hearst, they built the Hearst Hotel.
Yes. It
And
was,
this the Hearst Hotel there by,
yes, the one that's there now. So it was under construction, so they gave up this, finishing this. They bought the one on South Main Street, made it into the Delmonico Hotel. Then it had several owners and kept coming back to them. They could not make it pay. And so Alfred Hearst bought that to just kind of save it for the community. He didn't build it, he didn't want to run it, but he wanted to save it because it was a beautiful building, part of downtown Maquoketa. And then he too had trouble keeping somebody there who could actually run it and make it pay. And so now it's housing, senior housing. So, but it's still there and still beautiful. So, okay, just a couple quick ones. Old blacksmith shop in Spragueville, owned by George Edelman. And that's him right there. And this is William Blossfield, who was a big name in our history. Does anybody know what this is? So that was questioned in the book by Lowell Carlson. The lady who donated it, Evelyn Edelman, said that the whole family wanted to know what this was, and nobody knew.
Looks like
Anybody
a
have an
hose
idea?
from a fire
Whole
station.
thing that they would pull things out of the ditch or something, it looked like that hose.
To pull pumps
To
or
me, it looks
something?
like fire hose. Fire hose.
I don't know. So anyway, the book doesn't have the answer to that. Another beautiful big old barn is the Frank Buddy barn. I don't know if this barn is still standing. Leo Rubel donated the picture. But it talks about his cattle and his team, and but look at that wonderful old barn.
Yeah.
And then a John Deere store in Bellevue, the Jacob Goats.
Gets.
Oh, those names.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In Bellevue in 1913. And this is Wygant, that was the blacksmith in Bellevue all those years, and then a traveling salesman that just happened by there. And then last slide, last question. They have this picture in there of the Two Fred Saloon in Maquoketa before Prohibition. And then on the awning, it was at one time the Sunnyside Saloon, but they don't tell you where that was. Does anybody have any clue where that might have been? Sunnyside Saloon. Anyway, we're running out of time. We ran out of time. Thank you so much. I hope that if you find any of these books that you'll pick them up, because they're a wonderful glimpse into our past. And when you look at all the pictures in them and you put them together, it is our history. So thank you very much.